All right, we're going to begin with China, where moments ago President Trump gave a toast at a state banquet in his honor in Beijing. He called the Chinese leader a friend and invited him to the U.S. in September. This is a crucial summit for both countries with a lot on the line. While President Trump says the talks went, quote, great, President Xi had a blunt warning for the U.S. over Taiwan. CBS Evening News anchor Tony DeCopel begins our coverage from Taiwan's capital. Tony, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Adriana, and good morning from Liberty Square here in Taipei. And liberty is really what the people here of Taiwan hope to hold on to. They're worried that China won't allow them to do that. And what they're wondering today is whether the U.S. is going to play a role in all of this. President Trump, as you mentioned, is at that banquet right now with Xi Jinping in Beijing after meeting earlier as well with the president of China. As we've come to understand it, the food is being served over there, but the worst fear of the people of Taiwan is that they're, in fact, on the menu. And here's why. After the communists won China's civil war in 1949, the defeated leader and his followers fled to this island about 100 miles off the coast of mainland China. And since then, it's become a thriving, self-governing democracy. China, though, wants it back, and it hopes that President Trump will help or at least not defend it if war breaks out. And today, President Xi of China put it bluntly, calling this issue of Taiwan the most important one between his country and ours. And according to Chinese state media, he had a warning for President Trump that, quote, clashes and even conflicts could result if the issue isn't, quote, handled properly. We have a team of correspondents on this major story, and we're going to begin with Weijia Zhang, who is across the strait in Beijing for us. Weijia, good morning.
Good morning. This is President Trump's first time back in Beijing in nearly a decade, and China set the stage for his day-and-a-half visit with Chinese President Xi Jinping with an elaborate and precisely choreographed welcome ceremony before the two leaders had those intense talks that lasted for just over 2 hours. Chinese President Xi Jinping walked down the steps of Beijing's Great Hall of the People, waiting for the arrival of his guest, President Donald Trump. The world's two most powerful leaders shared a long handshake and took a lap along the red carpet. Trump was met with cheers from children waving American flags before they headed inside.
We should be partners, not rivals.
There, they stressed the importance of cooperation.
It's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be your friend. And the relationship between China and the USA is going to be better than ever before.
The White House says both presidents agreed on the need for China to buy more U.S. agricultural products. Overnight, China approved export licenses for more than 400 American beef processing plants, according to customs data. For Xi, Taiwan is top of mind. China wants reunification. And for the U.S. to stop selling arms to the self-governing island. Chinese state media says Xi raised the issue today, warning differences could bring the U.S. and China into, quote, conflict. But Trump declined to say whether it was discussed.
Mr. President, did you talk about Taiwan?
And the White House did not mention Taiwan in the formal summary of their meeting. It did include the war in Iran, saying Xi agreed with Trump that the Strait of Hormuz must remain open and that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon.
We had extremely positive and productive conversations and meetings today with the Chinese delegation.
Those conversations will continue tomorrow over a working lunch and tea ceremony. President Trump is not likely to leave China with any major announcements or agreements on those thorny foreign policy issues, although he has invited Xi to visit the U.S. in late September.
And we'll be covering it. Weijia, thank you very much.
More for On the Summit. Let's bring in Samantha Vinograd, a CBS News national security contributor and former assistant secretary for counterterrorism at DHS. Good morning, Sam. Okay, lots of pomp, lots of pleasantries. But that stern warning from Xi, Premier Xi, was ominous. We've seen there's basically been a Cold War over Taiwan for decades. What are the chances that this could turn into a hot war, an actual conflict?
Reunification with Taiwan is an existential issue for the Chinese Communist Party. Now, the U.S. intelligence community has assessed that the Chinese government isn't planning an invasion of Taiwan in 2027, but they're setting the conditions for reunification. And they want both actions and change in words from the United States. Action-wise, they want the United States to stop giving arms to Taiwan under statute known as the Taiwan Relations Act of 1979. They certainly want the United States to move military assets out of the region that could be used to defend Taiwan in the case of an invasion. And they want the U.S. to really step back from its unofficial ties with officials in Taiwan. But rhetoric is also really important here. The U.S. has historically focused on maintaining the status quo, the one China policy. And Xi will continue to press President Trump to signal with his words and not just his actions that the U.S. is open to reunification at some stage.
Yeah, words are so important, especially to the Chinese. Now, the comparison's been made by the former Deputy Secretary of State here in the U.S. that this meeting is compared to the 1972 meeting between Mao and Nixon in terms of how much personal authority these two men have. What does each person here, President Xi and President Trump, what do they each want out of this?
Well, while President Trump and President Xi have a huge amount of personal authority, I do think we have to note that China in 1972 is very different than China in 2026. The level of interdependence between our countries is exponentially higher than it was when Nixon went to China. At the same time, China's posture towards the United States, its active cyber campaigns against the U.S. government, against private citizens, is totally different than when Nixon went to China. So historically speaking, certainly these two leaders want to see less economic tension, more trade relations, a lifting in export controls, help on foreign policy issues like Iran. President Xi, as we discussed, wants Trump to change posture on Taiwan. But certainly the relationship between these two countries is more complex than ever, where, frankly, we really need experts from the intelligence community and experts working with China to advise the president on strategy as well as substance.
And we will stay tuned to see if progress is made. Sam Vinograd, thank you.
1 out of every 6 people on planet Earth are Chinese. That is a massive market for American companies, and that's why CEOs were on this trip. Anna Corin over in Beijing talked to some of the people in that market about this summit. Here's her report.
As the world's two most powerful leaders toured the Temple of Heaven seeking some divine inspiration, small crowds gathered in a nearby park hoping to catch a glimpse. I've been waiting here for 4 hours, says this man. It's good, though, the two leaders are talking. It makes a real difference when they discuss their problems in person. The last time Trump was in China was a year before the first trade war kicked off.
What does this visit mean for China-US relations?
State broadcast anchor Lu Xian had a front row seat to the fallout. And while tensions and mistrust have built up over the past 9 years, she believes the summit is reason for hope.
When they shake hands, when they touch the skin, feel the temperature, when they look into the other person in the eye, I think it's going to make a difference.
Economic and demographic problems plague China. But despite this, there is an air of confidence. Professor Wu Xinbo, who attended the state banquet, says his country is justified to feel this way. Do you think that China has the upper hand?
Well, at the moment, certainly China is in a stronger position. President Xi has more cards than Trump has at the moment, to borrow Donald Trump's words.
No matter who has the stronger hand, for these citizens, dialogue is key. I'll be paying attention because the whole country's economy is tied to this in some ways, says this woman. So I'll be following it. Now, Tony, this evening's state banquet, which has just wrapped up, was an extraordinary display of power in one room. Not just President Trump and Xi and members of their administration, but we are talking about titans of industry from both countries coming together, as I say, all in the Great Hall of the People in an effort to reset this relationship, which we know has faced tension and mistrust for years. Tomorrow, the two leaders will meet for their final meeting over tea. Then President Trump heads back to the United States. Tony.
Yeah, much of the global economy depends on this meeting. Anna, thank you very much. Appreciate it.